Okay, you guys, now we're going to look at how to calculate the issue price of bonds when the stated rate and the market rate are not the same. So, when a corporation starts to draw up a bond issue, well, they would include in the paperwork the market rate on that day. But there will be some lag time between when the bonds are drawn up, so to speak, and when they're issued. And during that lag time, the market rate will fluctuate. Right. So, as a way to bring the rates equal to each other, the issue price will fluctuate. Okay, so if the issuing company is paying a stated rate that's higher than the market rate on the issue date, then the bonds will be issued at a price higher than the face value. Why? Because the issuing company is paying a rate of return on the bonds higher than the going rate or market rate on that date. Now, if the opposite is true, if the issuing corporation has a stated rate that's less than the market or effective rate on the issue date, then bond investors would not be willing to pay full price for those bonds because they're not receiving the full market rate of interest. So they'll be issued at an amount below the face value as a way to bring the rates equal. Right. So that's in my words. Let's read through this. Corporate bonds have a stated rate of interest. However, since the market or effective rates change daily, sometimes we must sell bonds at a different price to yield the market rate. Remember, regardless of the stated rate of a bond, the company must give the investor a rate of return equal to the effective or market rate at the time the bonds are issued. Right. So we're going to look at the steps in calculating the issue price when those rates differ. So it's our first example here. Mac Company issues $750,000 of 8% 5-year bonds on June 30th, 2024. Excuse me, the bonds pay interest semi-annually on June 30th and December 31st. At the time of issuance, the effective rate for the bonds was 10%. Okay, so their stated rate here is 8%. And the market rate on the day the bonds were issued was 10%. Okay, so these bonds will be, the issue price on them will be less than $750,000 because they're paying less than the market rate of interest. Okay, so we know that just from reading those three sentences there, right? Okay, and then the bond term is 5 years with interest payable semi-annually. That means we'll have 10 interest payment periods. And then the face amount, of course, is $750,000. So let's take a look here. You can always, break it down, write those terms out. We just talked through it, but that certainly could help. Face value, again, $750,000. Stated rate of 8%. That's the rate of interest that will be paid semi-annually on this bond issue to the bond holders. The ER, or effective rate or market rate, is the going rate for similar bonds on the day these were issued. We'll use the stated rate to calculate semi-annual interest, but we will use the market rate in all of our present value calculations. Now, the term is 5 years and, again, 10 interest payment periods there. So when they're different, we calculate the issue price of the bonds, like I mentioned before there, using present value concepts or present value tables. Excuse me. What we mean by present value is an amount to be received in the future is not worth that same amount today. So if I ask you all, would you rather have $1,000 today? I'll send you a Venmo, right? Or you can wait and I'll Venmo you $1,000 5 years from now. When do you want your $1,000? Today or 5 years from now? Now, I can't hear your answers, but I'm assuming you'll all answer today, right? Anything could happen in the meantime. But the thought behind it is, if you take your $1,000 today, you could invest it in 5 years from now, you would have more than $1,000, right? Invested, of course, at a guaranteed rate. Now, so it's just called time value of money, right? Just an amount to be received in the future. $1,000, so to speak, to be received in the future is not worth to us $1,000 in today's dollars, right? So what we do is we'll end up taking the present value of the face amount and the present value of the semi-annual interest payments and add those together, and that'll give us the issue price of the bonds. So when the corporation issues the bonds, you guys, they're promising to pay what? 2 items in the future, right? Semi-annual interest through the period, in this case for 10 periods, and to repay the face amount at the end of the term. Those future cash flows, we want to know what they're worth today. So what we'll do is find the present value of the face amount of the bond. That's a single sum to be received in the future. And then we'll take after calculating the amount of the semi-annual interest payment, we'll take the present value of those interest payments as well. Add that to the present value of the face amount, and that gives us our issue price. All right, so let's, we've talked through it, but let's look at how to do it. I think that'll help a lot more. All right, so here we've got face value 750,000. I'm going to do this in Excel. But we got a face value, again, a face value of 750,000. We'll go to our table present value of $1. In this, we have 10 interest payment periods. That's 5 years with interest payable semi-annually at 5%. Now, I'm sure you're wondering where the 5% came from. Well, the market or effective rate is 10% for a year. So every 6 months, that would be 5%, and we'll always use that effective rate in our present value calculations. So we come down to the present value of $1 table. We've got it here in this handout. We come down on the left to 10 periods and across to 5%. And we'll multiply the face amount by that factor, 0.61391. And that'll give us the present value of the face amount. So what is $750,000 to be received 5 years from now, assuming semi-annual interest payments and an annual rate of 10%? What is that worth in today's dollars? Well, only $460,433. So you guys, the opposite would also be true. If you invested $460,433 today, with interest payable semi-annually and an annual rate of interest of 10%, then at the end of 5 years, you would have $750,000. Okay, so $750,000 to be received 5 years from now, only worth $460,433 today with these terms. Now we want to know the present value of the interest payments. So we'll start there with the face amount again. Then we'll multiply by half the stated rate to get the amount of semi-annual interest. Well, the stated rate, what was it? 8% for a year. So for 6 months, it would be 4%. So we'll say 750,000 times 4%. And that'll give us the amount of interest that the issuing corporation will owe the bondholders in total every 6 months for the next 5 years. Now, 30 grand every 6 months for 5 years, what is that worth to us today? Well, assuming interest is payable semi-annually and an annual rate of 10%, a 6-month rate of 5%, we'll multiply by that factor and get what that amount is worth in today's dollars. Now, if you just said, how many interest payment periods do we have? 10 times 30 grand every 6 months. That's easy to see. That's $300,000, right? But the present value will be, of course, less than that. So let's go to our table, this time present value of an annuity. Now, you guys, an annuity is just equal cash payments over time, whereas the face amount is a lump sum to be received in the future. The semi-annual interest every 6 months for 5 years, that fits the definition of an annuity, equal cash payments over time. So we'll go down to our annuity table. We're still using 10 periods at half the market rate. That was 5%. So we'll say 7.72173. 7.72173. I had a little formatting issue there. Here we go. All right, now we'll multiply our semi-annual interest times the factor from the table, present value of an annuity, 10 periods at 5%. And that tells us what? $300,000 to be received 10 times over the next 5 years, assuming these terms, is only worth $231,652 today. All right, so this was really, you guys, step 1. This was step 2. So, of course, this is step 3, but you guys, there's a little method to my madness here. If you want 3, you have to add together 1 and 2, right? Well, same thing here. If we want to get the answer for number 3, we take our answer from number 1, 460,433, the present value of the face amount, and add it to our answer from number 2, 231,652, our present value of the interest payments. And when we add those two together, we get $692,085. And that's our issue price. That's how much cash the issuing corporation will receive, Mac Company, when these bonds are issued. Notice it's less than the face amount. And again, that's because the stated rate, the rate being paid by Mac Company on these bonds, is less than the market rate on the day the bonds were issued. So we got the answer for you here too. I just like working through it in Excel. But notice they got present value of the face amount here as $460,433. Present value of the interest payments, $231,652, making the issue price $692.85. We can put it in up here too, $692.85. All right. So that's the issue price there. Again, it's always going to be less than the face amount when the stated rate is less than the effective rate. And those bonds are said to be issued at a discount. We'll get into that more a little later in this chapter. All right, now let's look at a similar situation. All right, here we go. I want to bring it down to this page. There we go. All right, Mac Company. They issue $750,000 of 12% 5-year bonds on June 30th, 2024. Okay, so now their stated rate is 12%. Still, we have semi-annual interest on June 30th and December 31st. And on the issue date, the market or effective rate was only 10%. So it stayed the same. The market rate's 10, but the stated rate is now up to 12, right? Okay, if the issuing corporation is paying a stated rate of 12 when the market rate is only 10, then investors would be willing to pay more for these bonds because they're paying a higher than market rate of interest. So the issue price on this one will be above face amount. And I know that just by comparing those two rates. Okay, but let's go through the calculations. Okay, you guys, on number one, this part doesn't change. The face value is still $750,000. We still want to take its present value with 10 interest payment periods. The market or effective rate is still 10%, so half of that's 5. It would be the same factor from that present value of $1 table. So the present value of the face amount didn't change because the market rate or effective rate didn't change. Now on the second calculation, it's going to be a little different. We'll take the face value times half the stated rate. Now it did go up. It went up to 12%. Half that is, of course, 6%. So semi-annual interest is now $45,000 rather than $30,000. If we want the present value though of the $45,000, so we'll go to the present value of an annuity table, still 10 periods at 5%. So we're still multiplying by the same factor. I won't go back to the table, but you just on this one present value of $1 table, this one present value of an annuity table. Both times it's 10 periods at 5%. So we'll multiply our new semi-annual interest of $45,000 by that factor from the table. And that tells us what? That our the present value of the interest payments is $347,478. Now we'll add 1 and 2 together to get 3. We'll take $460,433 plus the $347,478 present value of the interest payments, and that gets us to $807,911 as the issue price here. Notice we got the same one over here when we double check our work. $460,433. Again, that one held the same. $347,478 gives us that issue price of $807,911. And these bonds are issued at an amount higher than the face amount. Again, because the stated rate was higher than the market rate on the issue date. And these bonds are said to be issued at a premium, whereas the previous ones we looked at were issued at a discount. So premium if they're issued above face amount, a discount if they're issued below face amount. All right, and that's a good lead in, I think, to our next video. We'll go through some journal entries for our next 2 videos. We'll look at journal entries on a premium and a discount. Okay, thanks a lot, and as always, please be in touch if you need me. Thanks.